All right, and we are live. It is Preakness week, getting you ready for the Preakness. It is the third leg. Yeah, things you never thought you'd say for $500, Alex. I'm Anita Marks. She is Ashley Mailloux. We've been with you all season long, and this is Betting After Dark. And I know it's a little earlier than normal. A lot of time, I think usually, Ashley, what time do we usually hit? Like 10:30 at night? It's a little early, right?
Yeah, it's a little early, but it's dark outside.
It's still dark out. So, of course, that makes sense. So, Ashley, first and foremost, how weird or how interesting has this season been? The Triple Crown, as we always know, it opens with the Kentucky Derby, and then Preakness is the second leg. And, some of us are running between porta potties, trying to avoid beer being thrown at us. And then, of course, it ends at the bell. I mean, this is not your typical racing season. Like, how does this feel handicapping the Preakness now?
It's exhausting. Typically, this would kind of be like a lull. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still big stakes races, but when you're thinking about the schedule, we're talking about 2 races in May, 1 in June. Then we would have had, Travers and Jim Dandy. Jim Dandy would have been a prep for the Travers. And then from there, the options are kind of endless. And obviously then going towards November this year, the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland. So it's definitely shifted things, I think, in terms of the Triple Crown itself. Keeping these horses fit for a longer period of time has been a challenge. We've seen that. We saw horses that might have missed the other races in the Triple Crown now have a chance to kind of regroup and make the field for the Preakness, which is a different feel. Very different. I mean, just even having the Travers in between legs of the Triple Crown is just wild. It's wacky. It's weird stuff.
It is weird stuff. Before we start breaking down the races, and we've got 4 fun races we're going to break down for you, getting you ready for Saturday, race 7, 9, 10, and 11. That's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. Before we do that, we're really excited to announce that we're working with Stable Duel. And this is kind of fun. If you know anything about me, I'm all about football. I'm your NFL gal, and I'm all about fantasy. This is fantasy for horse racing. Like, as if we needed more things to wager on. Some brilliant people came out with fantasy for horse racing. And Ashley, I'm excited. I'm me. I'm definitely going to dive into this on Saturday. But Ashley, you've played around with this app. You've participated in this app. Kind of explain to the folks out there exactly how they can download the app and how they can utilize it come Saturday.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think kind of their first really trial run was the Breeders' Cup last year, and I placed in the top 25. That was my humble brag, so that was exciting.
Look at you.
I know. It was the best I've done. I've only had one other top 20 finish, so let's not talk about that, though. I've played in it a bunch. It's kind of a cool idea because you think about, as far as horse racing, some people might not know this, but a lot of the tournaments and competitions and things like that where you can, enter a contest, some of them are pick and pray. I mean, you're picking kind of one horse and just hoping for the best, and you have to put your eggs in one basket, where here you have a set salary. I believe it's about $50,000, and you'll go and you can buy 10 horses and enter them in your stable. And that works. You're trying to think okay, is that $5,000 a horse? No. So the price of a horse all depends kind of on their morning line odds. So the more of a favorite a horse is, the more expensive they are because they're more likely to win, which kind of changes things.
Okay. So for example, go heading into Saturday, what horse is the Patrick Mahomes of Stable Duel?
Yeah, so if you're thinking about just the Preakness itself, obviously authentic, coming into this race off the win in the Derby, morning line favorite automatically. I think he's just over $9,000. So you're almost taking 1/5 of your budget and putting it on one horse. So if you do that, you have to start picking out some long shots in other races, and how you win is all based on points, and points are assigned based on where your horse finishes. So you have options. I mean, you can pick 2 horses in the same race. Maybe they'll come in 1, 2. You could pick a different horse in every race, but it comes down to strategy, what you're willing to spend on a horse, and you have to take on some risk. And it's kind of cool if you go through the app, they tell you horses that are low, medium, high risk, and they try to help you out. But it's kind of in your hands. You got a budget, and you have to budget accordingly. So if you're going to pick a horse that's a favorite, you have to be willing to take some horses that are going to be big prices on the tote board, which means they're going to cost you very little in terms of your contest.
So again, it's called Stable Duel. I've already downloaded the app. So should you. They've got a Saturday's $10,000 Preakness contest. It's only for $25 to enter. And make sure, as I always do, I've got my paper and my pen ready because Ashley's about to start spinning the knowledge and taking notes so that you know what horses to roster come Saturday. So you ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're starting with the horse, or I should say race number 7, the DeFrancis Memorial Dash. And first and foremost, let's talk about this race. How long is it? What type of, is it turf? Is it dirt? What are they going to be racing on?
Yeah, so this is 3/4 of a mile. So it's 6 furlongs on the dirt. That's why it's called the Dash. This is a grade 3 race. Kind of looking at the field, we do have 8 entered. Assuming that they all go, we'll have a field of 8. And I figured we just start at the top of the horses I like and just kind of go in order of post position. So I think first on my list, I gave you a horse.
Right. So Admiral Lynch. And this is horse. This is number 1. Now, from what I understand, this is actually Plan B for this horse. This horse, I guess the owners wanted this horse to run in a Kentucky race, and apparently that didn't happen. So this really wasn't the plan for this horse. This is more like Plan B. Is there anything behind that story we should be aware of?
I'm not really sure why they ended up going in the spot, to be honest. I will say a lot of connections have like a plan A, a B, a C, and a D. You just don't know how it's going to work and schedule-wise. I mean, he's had a little bit of a break. We can see we haven't seen him since late July at Saratoga. Something that's interesting, we don't see it here necessarily, but sometimes you cross enter, especially in a stakes race. You might enter a stakes race here. You might enter one at Kentucky, see how the fields come up, and then you can scratch. That's an option for you in the stakes races. So, this horse coming to this spot, 7-2 morning line, I mean, that tells you a lot. But you kind of look at his races. I mean, this is a very tough 4-year-old son of Super Saver. Last time out, he kind of won for fun at Saratoga. And, it wasn't a stakes race or anything like that. But he drew clear by 4 1/4. The runner-up came back to win next time out. You can see that the font for the name of that horse on his mischief, you can see it's italicized. That's telling you the horse came back next time to win out. Your dog does not like this horse, I feel like, or I'm not sure.
Can you hear them? I'm sorry.
I'm waiting for mine to start. Yeah, no, mine will start barking next. But I think looking at Admiral Lynch, if you even go to the start 4 back, well, in the barn adjacent service, which we've talked about this before, these horses were kind of in jail afterwards where they couldn't race right away. They had to have a number of days off. And in the case of this horse, was second in that grade 3 down at Gulfstream Park behind Jackson. Prior to that, you can kind of go down the page and see some little stakes races. Actually raced in the Chick Lang as a 3-year-old, which is tomorrow at Pimlico. That's 3-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Was 3rd behind Luxitonian, who's been really successful this year. So for me, I mean, this horse has some backlash, but kind of seeing how he's regrouped since joining the Mike Maker barn. I mean, he's coming into this race off his career best buyer of 104, which is a really big number. So I think he looks pretty live in this spot.
Okay. The other horse that we've highlighted is Lakai. Tell me all the reasons why you have your eye on this horse in this race. You've got a big smile on your face.
Yeah, I love this horse.
Do you have a horse crush? Is this a horse crush?
I do.
For Ashley?
I know the trainer quite well, Damon Dilla DeVico, and he does a tremendous job with his horses. He's based out of Maryland. And kind of looking at Lakai and the story behind him, he's a Maryland bred. So you can see last year he raced in Maryland Million Day. He finished 5th. His stablemate, Taco Supreme, won that race. But looking at him, you see his races. He's raced at like Laurel, Penn National Parks, and Monmouth. There's something called the Match Series, which the nice thing about being in the Mid-Atlantic, you know this just from living where you are, you can travel to a lot of the Mid-Atlantic states within a couple hours. So they have kind of a circuit there of stakes races. You can see last year he was kind of going all over the places in those stakes races. He won a few. He picked some minor shares up. For me, I think he's a consistent horse to use underneath. Obviously, he's going to get a class test today. It's a grade 3. But last year, looking at him, he was 3rd, in the grade 3 General George. So I think if I'm price shopping, which we know I love to do, I love shopping, but price shopping is even better. He's a horse that I'm going to use maybe for the bottom of my ticket. I might use him maybe for 3rd in a trifecta, just because he's kind of that consistent, hard-knocking horse. I mean, if you look at him this year, He's got a win in 3 seconds in a row. So he sticks around. He's tough.
The other horse that you like is Landeskog. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. I know you're bigger into hockey than I am.
He's named after a hockey player. You're right.
There you go. But from what I understand, a nice pedigree in regard to being a sprinter type of horse. So is this a horse that we can see that is going to set the pace in this race, Ashley?
I mean, he's certainly quick enough. I mean, the thing I will say here, it's the DeFrancis Dash, aptly named. There are a lot of horses that have early foot. I mean, Admiral Lynch wants to be forwardly placed. The 2, Christo Sky. I feel like in this race, it'll be interesting to see how many horses are, trying to make the lead, because I think that's where you get that kind of speed battle. Now, in the case of Landeskog, I think he doesn't need the lead to win. We just highlighted that race 3 back, which was over a year ago at Del Mar. It wasn't a stakes race or anything like that, but he...
Oh, no. Ashley, I think there we go.
There? Sorry.
That's okay. We lost you for a hot second.
Yeah, sorry. So like looking at that race 3 back, he sat just off the pace, but he barely. I mean, he was forwardly placed, almost on the lead, and kind of blew by them in the end to win by 4 3/4. Now, I think the interesting thing with him, he's only got 1 start in 2020. Now, he raced in almost a year off the layoff. It was just kind of a class test, and it was his first start for Brad Cox, who has had a phenomenal year. You think of the big horses he's trained. He kind of has a cavalry in his barn, a very competitive bunch. You don't know what you're working with off that long of a layoff. So for him to draw clear by almost 2 lengths, I think that's a pretty nice performance. You see Florent Giroux won the Kentucky Oaks this year. Big performance with She Dares the Devil. So a lot of positive connections here. It's going to be interesting to see how he can race. Second time off the layoff, horses usually improve. So, that gives him kind of a little bit of confidence. And you see his 5-2 morning line. So he looks live.
Last but not least, so I know Stan the Man was listed in this race, but apparently has also entered a race in Belmont on Saturdays. So I guess that would mean that he'd be scratched from this race, but I know there's been no word on that as of yet, correct?
I love how you're like giving me the breaking news, because when I downloaded the form, we haven't talked about this, but if a horse is cross-entered in another spot, I mentioned you can maybe race, enter for a couple spots and pick your spot. Usually what you'll see is, when you look at the past performances and we go down the page, we see like this says 20 August 20, 27 June 20. Right above that most recent race, it'll tell you where else they're entered for. So this is like breaking news, because this came out today and that is not in the form. So
is Anita Marks a football chick breaking horse racing news?
I know. You're turning into like one of us. This is scary. Oh my gosh. So, it could be a couple things, but this is music to my ears. This is new knowledge.
Okay. So as always, before we move on to our next race, I always ask you, how would you play this? I will say if Stan the Man stays in this spot, I do think he's a horse to use, because if you look at 2 back, he won the True North. The winner of that was second in the True North. The winner for Inspire just came back to win this past weekend in a Breeders' Cup. You're in your win race. So you see that's a grade 2. This is a grade 3. It'll be interesting to see. You also see Johnny V's aboard. So for me, I would play, first off, I know it's going to be I think Lakai is going to go off higher than 6-1 in this spot. I really do, especially if Stan the Man stays in. So I play an exacta where I'm going to use the 1, 5, and 7 on top with the 4 for second. It's really cheap. If you want to play it for $2, it only costs you $6 total. Wow.
And yeah, really affordable. And then kind of looking at this from here, the 1 Admiral Lynch, I think he could be extremely tough, and I'm going to try to beat Landeskog. So I'd use Admiral Lynch on top in a trifecta. So I'd play that 1 with, and then I'd use 5-7 with 4-5-7. And that for $1 try is only going to cost you $4. Really cheap. And you can kind of, you want to play $20, play it for $5. You can hit it 5 times.
Look at you.
Trying to be affordable. I mean, there are a lot of races.
Listen, listen, we're in the middle of a pandemic. All right. People, listen, people don't have as much money maybe as they normally would heading into the Preakness. So trying to make getting you the most bang for your buck, literally your buck. All right. Let's talk about race 9. This is the Hilltop Stakes, 3-year-olds, 1 mile on grass. And from what I understand in the research that, you know, because let me rewind. Let me rewind. I have to, and you know that I absolutely adore you, and I think you're absolutely fantastic. I have a newfound love and appreciation for horse racing because of the work that we've done together this season.
That's so adorable.
And I really have, and I feel like I know that America's Best Racing brought me in because they wanted somebody who really didn't know a lot about horse racing to be paired up with you because you know so much about horse racing. But I felt like I was doing you a disservice by coming in and like not knowing anything. So
that's what it's about. That's like one of my favorite things is like, I think anyone can go to the racetrack. It's different. We're not going to the racetrack, but I think you can take someone that's never been to the track and you can at least find them one thing and they can walk away and say, that was cool. That was fun. I'd like to do that again. And there's so much, you know, it's more than just gambling. I mean, we're here to also make money. So,
but I learned so much from you. So, but I always feel like I come in to do the show and I want to be a little bit in the know. And so from what I understand, this race, probably more than any other, it's just so wide open and there's a lot of value in this race. Would you agree to that?
This is, to me, when we looked at these 4 races, this was a race that I would go lighter in a different race and like not spend as much. And this is the race that I would put more of my money on because I think this is wide open.
Exactly. Okay. So let's start with Chocolate Bar. Had a nice race in Kentucky. So coming off of that, what is it about this horse you like so much?
I think looking at Chocolate Bar, I mean, broke the maiden only in for a $40,000 tag against maiden claimers at Saratoga. So, okay horses, but not like that kind of pristine. I mean, you could have bought this horse out of that race for $40,000. And I think the race is at Kentucky Downs. So Kentucky Downs is in Franklin, Kentucky. I've been there once. I drove almost 3 hours to go there and then drove all the way back 3 hours. And it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's got a different, it's not like that pretty oval that you're going to see at Pimlico or a lot of tracks. It's got a different feel to it. But the purses at Kentucky Downs are very large because they only race a few days a year. And with that said, we know this. When there's dollars, people are attracted to it. So these fields are actually not only big fields, but they're pretty competitive. And looking at the trip that he got, this is his first time against winners in his career. He was dead last. He was squeezed at the start. I mean, this kind of tells you everything you need to know. It just was not the ideal trip. He starts rolling. He's just motoring, and he misses by a head. I mean, it's almost like, you know, you feel bad for him. He kind of should have won the race, but he ran one heck of a race. I think it's a pretty big performance. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what he does here. I think this is a great stakes race to kind of put him into, but at the same time, it is a really competitive field.
All right. Sensation. Could this be the horse that is going to set the tone in regard to the speed in the race?
I see you did your homework. You're trying to figure out the pace scenario. This one's trained by Kelsey Danner, who, you know, she kind of spends her winners down in Florida. Now, broke the maiden 3 starts back at Tampa, and then had some time off. Came back against winners for the first time at Gulfstream Park, which that would be a class test. You know, some of the bigger stables do race their horses in maiden special weights at Tampa, but the next start, I think, is where you really get to see what sort of caliber of horse you have. And I think the thing with Sensation that you pointed out, this horse kind of goes to the front. And I really think Sensation's going to have to go in here to kind of stick around for a share in general. I mean, looking at others in here, Ocean's Map has been sort of forwardly placed, but I think some of the times, as far as fractions that Sensation has raced, has been faster. Monday Morning QB, this is going to be a toss-up because we're getting on turf. Horses never raced on the turf. Another one that I do think will be maybe part of the pace scenario is the 10. So I will say Sensation will be a factor. I don't know if this one will make an easy lead, but the big thing with him is last time out, he kind of got tired late. He just didn't have anything left, and that was going a 1 1/8. So he is cutting back. So he's not a horse that I would probably use in my top 4 in this field just because it's such a competitive bunch, but you don't know what happens when they get to the front.
All right, Reconvene. Now, this is a gelding. From what I understand, every race that this horse has run, a little bit of improvement, a little bit more improvement, a little bit more improvement. And how significant is the jockey with Bravo in the way that maybe he might run this horse in this race, maybe could do something different here?
Yeah, you can kind of see there are rider switches, and Ben Perkins Jr. He's a very strong trainer this year, and he does very well with younger horses or maidens. I've looked at some of his numbers at maidens, especially at Monmouth Park, and he kind of dominates there. Now, you mentioned Joe Bravo, something we haven't touched upon, but with Keeneland opening this weekend and Belmont having races, jockeys had to make decisions here of where they'd go. Now, in the case of Joe Bravo, Paco Lopez is also coming in. The summer meet at Monmouth just wrapped up. There's only, I think, 9 days in October there. So some of these riders made the decision, like they would go down to Pimlico. And I think he's been there for a few days now. So, I mean, he's there for other mounts, but he rode this horse to victory last time out. He didn't ride this horse when he broke his maiden, but this horse has really been one that I follow because I handicap Monmouth a bit for Twin Spires. And to see this horse kind of, after 2 okay races, one was good, one wasn't so good, then broke the maiden pretty nicely. Last time out, really stepped up and poured it on late. I still think for this horse to win, it's going to have to step up. You mentioned gelding him. How could that change? Some people really love playing horses first time gelding. It was an interesting move to me. I don't know enough about the horse, but after he won, they gelded him 3 days later. So, you're taking any, potential to breed away, and that's fine. I mean, this horse, he's just getting his first stakes race, so they must not see anything there. And he could improve. Maybe he's being kind of studdish. Maybe he's being green in a handful so that they think maybe if they geld him, he'll kind of settle down and get his, marbles aligned.
No pun intended.
I said that and I was like, oh
boy. Wow, you opened the door right there, Ashley. I walked right through it. Vanzi, not so great on soft turf. So what do you expect in this race?
You pointed it out. I think Vanzi had excuses last time out. I mean, went off at 4-1 and just never made a move. I mean, was dead last. You kind of see that the trip that panned out, it said bobbled at the break. He was bumped around, but he never made up any ground. And looking at his prior races on the turf, he won the Jersey Derby at Monmouth. And so I do think a huge part of it had to do with the turf course. So I will say, I know Pimlico's off the turf a couple races tomorrow. That's already been announced. But I think and I don't think there's any rain. So as long as there's no rain, I think we should have a firm footing, on Saturday. So I think that'll help him. I just think looking at him, you can see they had different ideas for him because as a 2-year-old, they started him on the dirt at Parks. Then they took him up to Woodbine for the display stakes, which is for 2-year-olds, and he went gate to wire. And then the next 2 races you see, I mean, when you see the Withers and you see the Rushaway, you're thinking more of, okay, what are we going to do? 3-year-old, right? We're thinking maybe Triple Crown, whatnot. These are like little prep races. And, he won the Rushaway. And then after that, he had a lot of time off. So he might have needed a break, might have had something minor go wrong. And then they've decided to start him back up on turf. And I don't think that's surprising because when you look at, his wins prior to that, 2 of the 3 were on a synthetic surface. When you see a synthetic move to turf, they usually suggest they go kind of hand in hand. So, yeah, I do expect him to improve. And, Paco Lopez piloted him to victory at Monmouth, and he's climbing back aboard today.
All right. You know me, quarterback, football, anything related to football. We got to talk about the horse.
Football or Phillies? Those are your 2 things.
There you go. We haven't gotten there yet, but Monday morning quarterback. The first thing before we started the show, I said, wait a minute, some NFL player or owner or coach, somebody has to have some type of investment in this. We're not sure. We don't think so. But a second ago, you mentioned this is the first time that this horse is going to be racing on turf. But also, from what I understand, early on in the year, this is a horse that was in discussion in regard to being on the Derby trail. So what derailed that, and what can we expect from this horse maybe on Saturday?
So to me, a couple things to just comment on his career. He started in Pennsylvania at Parks, second on debut, then he wins, and then they put him in the Heft. And the Heft's a nice little $100,000 race at Laurel Park, not too far away from Pimlico. Put a good performance in there. And then next time out, they said, okay, first start as a 3-year-old. Let's see what we got. Let's put him in the grade 3 Withers at Aqueduct. And considering his performance, a 4th in there was okay. At the time, you're looking at the top 3 in there. Max Player, that name certainly rings a bell. Shotsky was kind of regarded. I think that's the one that's trained by Jerry O'Dwyer, who's also kind of based in Maryland and Portos. he finished fourth in there, and he actually made a move, but then everyone else was kind of making a better move than him late. You can see at one point he was kind of second late in the race. As you can see, he had a big break. He went from February to September with no start. So my guess is he needed some time off. Maybe he had a little minor issue. And then they put him in the Federico Tessio. And that was on September 7th at Laurel, and he's second there. Now, I believe from what I had read, the Preakness was on kind of the table or something that was maybe being mentioned. And I think probably had a lot to do with how the field came up. There are some long shots in there, but you have, Swiss Skydiver decided to go. New York Traffic decided to go. Mr. Big News, who was third in the Derby, as well as Authentic. Maybe they just thought this was a better spot coming out of the Tessio, and they opted for this spot. And I think that's probably the right move, just making that second start since February. But the big thing is turf. I think he'll be fine on the turf. I'm not super worried about turf with him, but it's interesting. The trainer's 0 for 7 with first turf, and the trainer's also 0 for 14 moving horses from the dirt to turf. But that could be the type of horse, that could be the class. I mean, it's a pretty classy horse for the most part.
All right, another horse, Don Juan Kitten, which, by the way, I actually dig the name, but this is another horse, first time on turf. So, I mean, what makes these trainers and these jockeys and these owners think that these horses, if they've never raced on turf before, what should we be looking at to say, okay, the fact that the first time this horse is racing on turf, not to be concerned about it.
So Don Juan has raced on the turf. You see all the circles with the T. He has a horse in here that's entered in a long shot in here that hasn't raced on the turf. Maybe you got them confused, is the 14, who's a big long shot, Paradise Pride. But Don Juan Kitten has raced on the turf. But in general, when you look at horses trying the turf for the first time, the things that I'm looking at how the trainer does sometimes. At this level, the other thing you'd be really looking at probably, especially with younger horses, is pedigree. Just seeing, okay, look at their pedigree. Did the sire, did he win on the turf at all in his career? I mean, like, for example, in Don Juan Kitten, you see Kitten's Joy. That is the first thing. If I can teach you one thing, if you ever see Kitten's Joy, just think turf. That's, that's really the pedigree there. There's some horses you just see dirt. So pedigree's a lot of it. And the good thing is, I know we use DRF here. We use the classic PPs, but it's, if someone wants to, to really get into it, I can tell you're getting into it. Something you might want to look into is Formulator. Formulator lets you kind of go in there and you can click around on the pedigree and figure out, okay, how many siblings does this horse have? Have they won on turf? You can do that homework. It's a little easier. But I would say here, in the case of Don Juan Kitten, it's not even shocking that his first race in his career, and actually all of his races, have been on the grass, just seeing that he is by Kitten's Joy. And he works out okay on the dirt, but that pedigree is what really stands out.
All right. And last but not least, Bye Bye Melvin, coming off of a good win at Saratoga, an impressive win at Saratoga. And also his trainer is from Maryland, right? And has had, from what I understand, a lot of success, obviously. Pimlico's in Maryland.
Yeah, so Graham is stabled. He's got a string at Fair Hill, and that's kind of where a big number of his horses are. And, the race that we've been talking about that's kind of been the focus now is the Saranac, and that's at Saratoga. We talked about the soft turf course. Vanzy didn't like it. The pace setter was Don Juan Kitten, and in the case of Bye Bye Melvin, he just set a couple lengths off the pace and made up ground. And I think in the soft turf course, that's probably where you wanted it to be. You didn't want to be too far back on that footing. You can see the rate, typically the softer the ground too, they're going to go slower. So in this case, I think Bye Bye Melvin got a great trip. Looking at his progression, the big thing with him is I think he's shown improvement. His numbers have slightly improved. They put him in the Tampa Bay Derby this year on the dirt, and he only beat 2 horses that day. But then they put him at the Kent at Delaware, first time off the layoff. I think he needed a race. And then in his last 2, he's gone off at some wicked odds. I mean, in the Jersey Derby, you mentioned Vanzy was the winner. This horse was 37-1. Then, okay, he finished his second there. They put him in the Saranac, and he goes off at 19-1, and he wins it with JR in the saddle. And you get Johnny V once again today. We're definitely not going to get that big price on him. I mean, he's 6-1 morning line. I think he might be there, maybe even a little lower. So he's one that I think he liked the soft turf course. I don't think he needs a soft turf course looking at his other races, but he's got a huge shot.
All right. So again, as we mentioned, we started breaking down this race, wide open, lots of value. So how are you going to play this, Ashley?
So I'm going to play an exacta in here. I'd probably play actually a heavy exacta in here, maybe for like $5. And the way that I'd probably land it, and this is going to be hefty on my part, like I said, you can play $1. I'm going to use the 10 and the 13 on top, and I'm going to use prices underneath, one of which is going to be the 7 Vanzy and then the 4 Reconvene. Now, I mentioned Reconvene's really going to have to step up, so I'm always looking for those trifecta bets. So as far as my try is concerned, I would use the 10 and the 13 on top. And then in the second spot, I would use the 7, 10, and 13. And then for the third spot, I'd actually toss a couple horses in. I'd use the 4 Reconvene. I'd use the 9 Monday Morning QB. And we didn't talk about this horse, but I think this horse does have a shot. This is also Brad Cox and Florent Giroux. That's number 12, Andesite. I think that's named after a stone or something, maybe. Sounds right. Rock, something. That's a horse that I would use in the third spot. So that's a little bit hefty of a ticket. I know we put it up here at the structure. I would probably, if I was smart, I would use the 10-13 in that third spot for coverage, but I'm always trying to just get a bigger price. So I may try to take them out depending on how much I'm going to want to spend on this race. But I told you, this is a really wide open race. And I know you always ask me, who do you think is going to win? From a win perspective, I'm going to try to beat Don Juan Kitten, who I think is going to be part of the pace scenario, and I would go to the 13, Bye Bye Melvin.
Okay, fantastic. Now we're moving to race number 10, and kind of bittersweet for me. As you know, I spent 4 years in the Baltimore area, and I would every year I was there. I went to the Preakness, and my favorite day was Black Eyed Susan Day. I enjoyed my Fridays at the track, to be honest with you, more so than I enjoyed my Saturdays at the track. So very interesting. And I understand, this is a different year. 2020 has been kind of crazy. So now Black Eyed Susan now is going to be, the race is going to be, is going to be on Saturday instead of Friday. So, which is interesting. So
yeah, I think part of it had to do with partially, if I had to guess, scheduling with riders, having to come in and like having a limited time that they have to, be on the grounds by and things like that. I think if these riders were going to come in and they had mounts in the Black Eyed Susan and here to allow them to maybe go to Keeneland on Friday and other things, they decided to put them all in one day. It makes it a little easier. And they just kind of changed the Friday schedule around. It's a claiming crown now, which we won't go into the details of it, but it's a different calendar. It's a different year. It's different. But I agree. I love when these races are kind of split up. You got the girls one day, the boys the other. It's a lot of fun.
All right. So let's start with Bonnie South. The favorite, right, coming in, second place finish to Swiss Skydiver. We're going to talk about in the next race, of course. Also, from what I understand, he dares the devil as well. So what is it about this horse that makes her so special and so good?
I mean, looking at Bonnie, I've always really liked her. I think in some races, especially the Ashland, I was slightly disappointed in her when she finished 4th. Speech won that. Venetian Harbor was 2nd, but she's been pretty consistent. She's a 3-time winner from 6 starts. Last time out, she was 2nd in the Alabama, and she was closing from towards the back of the pack and made up ground. And, Swiss Skydiver, she's as far as 3-year-olds go, she's towards the top of the list, if not towards, now you got She Dares the Devil. It changes things up a little bit, but she ran a really big performance last time out. This one had a 98 Beyer speed figure, which was over 10 points higher than her previous speed figure of an 87. And I think the other thing to consider, she won the Fairgrounds Oaks. Pretty nice performance from her. And her main thing is she closes from off the pace. But if you look at her when she broke her maiden, she won the race. 2nd was She Dares the Devil, who came back next time out. And you can see that race on, when was it? On the 20, let me see. Oh, I lied. It was the next start that they met. So this one, I got a little confused there on the chart. You see where it says maiden special weight, it says 2nd. Below that, it actually tells you she was awarded first purse money. So the race that I'm looking at is the first race back after she broke her maiden. She beat She Dares the Devil in a race down there. Big performance from her. So with her and kind of figuring out how the race is going to shape up, there looks to be enough pace in here. I think she's going to get a good trip and have enough to run at late. It's going to make her ground up. And on paper, she is the filly to beat.
Okay, hopeful growth. You mentioned the Kentucky Oaks. Not a great performance in that. So do you see her rebounding here?
Yeah, I do. This is a filly that I liked. I really liked her performance in the Monmouth Oaks. She was closer to the pace that day. She got a really good trip from Antonio Gallardo, and she drew clear by 4 lengths, and she was just kind of much the best in there. You see Project Whiskey was second. The horse is on the rail, and this race come on Saturday. I just think last time out, she did face really, really tough horses. I mean, you're looking at, she's coming out of the Kentucky Oaks, and you're looking at the other horses in here. Dream Marie comes out of the race, but that's it. And Dream Marie finished last. So just seeing the competition that she faced, I think this is a better group. I mean, yes, she's facing Bonnie South in here, but she's not facing She Dares the Devil and Swiss Skydiver. So that's some class relief in its own. She's kind of been inconsistent, though. I will say that. Like in the beginning of her career, her first 3 starts, she had 2 wins and a second. And then she kind of had a bad race at Delaware Park in the Delaware Oaks. If I'm not mistaken, that was a pretty decent payout in that race. So, the horses that were favored, they didn't perform the way people expected them to. So to see her rebound after that in the Monmouth Oaks, then last time out, the grade 1 was just too tough for her. I like her in this spot. It's Anthony Margotto Jr., Trevor McCarthy. Trevor is always kind of cleaning up in Maryland, does such a good job there. I mean, he's winning at 21% on the year. Look at his percentage right now at Pimlico. Now, Pimlico's only raced 3 days so far, I believe. He's winning at 28%.
Wow.
Yeah. Really great rider.
Last but not least, Miss Marissa. Now, from what I understand, this is, would you agree she's going to be the speed in the race and also does a lot better on dirt?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I mentioned Mizzenbeau has some early foot in here, but I do think Miss Marissa is going to go. I do think the 10 landing zone has some early foot. You can see this one. I think the big thing that really stands out in looking at her performances, we're going to pull up landing zone real quick. Yeah, you can see landing zone in those races have just gone to the front. But in Miss Marissa's case, and you're trying to look at the progression that she's made, her wins. When she wins, she's on the lead. You can even look at when she broke her maiden in September of 2019 at Belmont. She went to the front. She won. Okay. Next time out, she didn't make the lead. She wasn't there. Same thing happened the following couple starts. She picked up some minor shares. She got 3rd in the Ruthless at Aqueduct, and then they raced her in the Wide Country. She was 4th, but she's got to go to the front, I think. There's no way they're going to rate her. You can't change a horse. If that's the best, you want to put him in the best shot to win, you got to go. Now, interestingly enough, this race and the distance is 1.1 1/8. So she's gone 1.1 1/8. She went that at Saratoga last time, and she won in gate to wire fashion. And this was a big, big increase. I mean, she had never had an 80 Beyer speed figure before that. She had a 91. She got to the front. I think the way I describe her is when she gets out there kind of by herself, she gets bold. She's like, okay, I got this, and just goes. And I think kind of looking at that performance and how she did, she was an upset. She was 20-1, but she's going to be a part of the pace scenario. Now, for me, I think she's going to get a huge class test here. You see, she's been in a grade 1 and a grade 2 in the past. That being the grade 1 was the Frisette. She didn't fare too well. She kind of hang with the competition. Now, maybe she's better as a developing 3-year-old. She's getting older, and it's later in the season, and I think she's kind of stepped up. I just see her maybe sticking around for a minor share, if that. She's a horse that I'd probably use for, like I said, like 3rd in a try. I don't see her taking him gate to wire again at this level of competition.
Okay, so how are you playing this one?
Unfortunately, I think I have to chalk out here. If I had to play a win, I know. If I had to play a win bet, I mean, this to me is Bonnie South. That's what I see. But I will say Hopeful Growth for me is like the clear second horse in the field, just because I think if Hopeful Growth can get a trip similar to the Monmouth Oaks and just sit off the pace, a length or 2 off the pace setters, that's kind of where I'd want to be, because I know a lot of these horses, a couple of them at least, 2 or 3 are going to go to the front. A couple are going to come from way far back. So I think Hopeful Growth is going to get a good trip. But I think this is Bonnie South. This is her time to shine. She's not having to face some of the really, really tough fillies. So I'd kind of be surprised if she didn't win.
Okay. Maybe a horse that that somebody could use in the stable duel.
Yeah, you could use this horse. I feel like now, if the horse doesn't win and you use the horse in the stable duel, I have to send you an entry fee or something. But again, the problem with the stable duel is you have to make these decisions of what is a good price on a horse, and it's all based on the morning line. So this horse being 7 to 5, not sure on the exact number, but I would say this horse is going to cost you $8,000 to $9,000 is my guess.
Oh, wow.
Little hefty. So for me, thinking of a contest, I really do think Bonnie Self is tough. So I either wouldn't use a horse out of this race. I'd save a different race and pick a horse out of there. Or if I was trying to go for an upset, I'd use Hopeful Growth because the price is going to be better. It's going to cost you way less money to use Hopeful Growth than it would Bonnie Self in Stapledom.
Boom. There you go. All right. The moment everybody's been waiting for. The Preakness race. Race number 11. Let's start with Mr. Big News.
Yeah.
What do you like?
This is my, I guess, long shot. I always have, for every Triple Crown race, I'm always looking for that long shot. I picked the wrong one last time. This would have been a good one to use in the Derby at 46 to 1. I was just impressed. I mean, if you're watching like NBC and you're watching the coverage and you can remember when they're getting ready to just enter the final, stretch run, you see this horse and you see this rider going, like trying to send this horse. A horse is making a move. That's Gabriel Size and Mr. Big News. And I thought it was a really big performance. I mean, we're talking about a horse that really stepped up. Prior to that, he was 6th in the Bluegrass. It was a mid-pack finish because it was 13 horses this year. He raced really well at Oaklawn, 3 starts back, and kind of seeing who he beat. He beat Farmington Road and Tyshawn. These were horses that were kind of always on the trail, but just didn't make the cut. They didn't make it into these Triple Crown races. And he's been interesting. I really think in ways he's kind of a horse that I thought at the price is intriguing. Coming out of a really big performance, maybe the Derby did take something out of him. But if I'm price shopping, I don't think he'll win. I'll be very blunt. I don't think he'll win. But I do think he's a horse to use underneath because he has shined at good times. I mean, you see that, like I said, the race at Oaklawn, he showed a lot. And then first race off that break, not so much. But the Derby, I guess if you're going to, step it up, finishing 3rd in the Derby's a good time to do it.
All right. Art Collector. This is a horse that we've talked about quite frequently here on our shows. So what are you expecting from him on Saturday?
So Art Collector, obviously, plan was to go into the Derby, and unfortunately for Thomas Drury, had to, do the best thing by the horse and scratch the horse. Had a minor issue, nothing obviously that serious, but enough to not make it to the Derby starting gate. And well, Art Collector's got early foot. I mean, he kind of wants to go to the front. We saw that in the Ellis Park Derby, took them gate to wire. You saw that 3 starts back at Churchill, and in the Bluegrass, he really was close to the front the entire time and drew clear in there to win. He beat Swiss Skydiver. He beat Rushy, who came back to win next time out. I mean, this horse, he's got early foot. I mean, if you really want to dig deeper into it, 4 starts back, he didn't need the lead. He didn't make the lead. He was kind of mid-pack, and he still won. So he's been a fun horse to kind of watch. Seeing him now, he's gone from 7 furlongs to a 1.16 to a 1.125. So I think the 1.316 he should be fine. But he's got early foot, and he really hasn't been pressured, last time out or 3 starts back on the lead. It'll be interesting to see what happens if he really has like heavy pressure and they have to duke it out on the front end early. But this has been a horse that he's kind of climbed his way up, and he's gotten more press around him. He's become more popular. And I think if people are looking to beat Authentic, if you took a survey of people, this is probably the horse they're looking to.
Well, a lot of people were putting money or would love to put money or were trying to put money on him in the Derby. And
right.
and quite a few people were upset when he couldn't give it a go. So this was going to be the horse that they thought was going to upset Tiz the Law.
Right. So, thinking about that now, Tiz the Law got, beaten by Authentic. You got to think the same thing. They're going to put him kind of on the same level at this point and maybe think that if someone's going to beat him, it might be him.
Listen, we've got to talk about Swiss Skydiver. I know you're laughing, but I'm
only laughing.
I mean,
we have to share what happened. I didn't have Swiss Skydiver on my short list. Anita emailed me instantly and was disappointed.
No love for the women that are racing with the men. I mean, this is amazing. We got to give her a shout out. We're 2 women hosting a horse racing show for ABR. Come on, we got to represent our girl here running against the fellas. Here's something interesting that I came across today. This will be her 9th race at her 9th different track. And yet she doesn't seem, the travel, just nothing seems to affect her at all. That's really impressive, Ashley.
Yeah, she's very tough. I mean, you mentioned this, and they're traveling, and she's traveling almost every month for the most part. Looking at her, she was second in the Kentucky Oaks. And you think about the Kentucky Oaks, we talked about She Dares the Devil. That was the horse that I said I loved at a price. The other two horses we talked about were Swiss Skydiver and Gamine, the top three, the trifecta. Now, everyone had this I don't know, they kind of put Gamine on a pedestal, and if there was one little notch below, it was Swiss Skydiver. Swiss Skydiver still ran a great race, just was not the best horse that day. I mean, She Dares the Devil was phenomenal. And Gamine was probably the most disappointing to many people in that spot. So I don't want to take anything away from her. She won the Alabama. She was second against the boys in the Bluegrass, just behind Art Collector. And, she was kind of on the lead and just hung around for second. She's consistent. I mean, how could you, not love a horse like this in the sense that she's 9 for 10 in the money. 5 of those 10 starts, they've been wins. She's still going to get a test here. I mean, Art Collector beat her once before. Now she's facing some different boys that didn't race in the Bluegrass. We're going to talk about Authentic in a little bit, but they haven't clashed yet. And I do think Authentic might be on a different level than her. So I didn't just, not include her for anything specific. I mean, she's another horse that you probably will consider when wagering. I just kind of looked at more of the logicals, and then if I was looking for a big price, I don't think she's going to be a big price. So for me, a horse like Mr. Big News, or maybe, some people are New York Traffic fans, those are more of the price horses.
That's okay. I'm going to put her in my stable dual lineup.
There you go. She'll be a good price. She won't be too cheap. She won't be too expensive. She'll be just right.
That's what I'm going to do. All right, let's talk about Max Player. What I was reading here, came in third twice against Tiz the Law.
Yeah, we've talked about Max Player a bit now, right? Because before the Belmont, he's a horse, Max Player kind of made sense. I mean, he was in the barn to Linda Rice. Linda Rice did a phenomenal job with him. I just watched a recent interview with Steve Asmussen, and he said the same thing. He came into great shape into the barn. But they made a decision to have this horse move to Steve's barn. First start with Steve was in the Derby, and he ran 5th. And I think, that's probably where he was probably a horse to use. Like, I thought he maybe could hit the superfecta. He was just one spot out of it, but he comes from off the pace. He makes ground up, and you can see he's just kind of always, he's late to the party. He's just not getting it done. You saw that. He lost by 7 lengths. You saw in the Travers, he lost by 7.5, and I will defend him there. I mean, Tiz the Law, Travers Day, sensational. We've talked about that. I mean, the performance to see him win like that so effortlessly was truly special. So I still think it was a good race from Max Player, but to me, he's needing more. Now he's going to get a rider change. He's going to get Paco Lopez. And Steve had kind of said that maybe a rider like Paco, I mean, Paco's more aggressive. You'll always hear this. Paco's more aggressive. And I think maybe he can get this horse into the race earlier. Maybe these other riders just haven't had that. And I think Paco's going to have that in his mind, that this horse needs to be closer to the pace early on, and Paco's going to make it happen. So maybe that'll change things for him. I think, if that's the case and Paco can get him closer, but can get him to relax and be closer, he can maybe get a piece in here.
Okay. Authentic. And again, doing my research here, this is a horse that needs to be challenged. Would you agree with that in assessing the races that he's been in?
Yeah, he's a little handful. I think he's kind of one of those horses that might be his own worst.
That's an understatement.
I think that was in the Sham, if I'm not mistaken, that it's interesting. I think his last 2 races, he's gotten what he needs, but in the Sham, he got out there by himself. And I don't know if he just is like, oh, what do you want me to do anymore? Like, there's no one here. I don't have to do my thing. But he kind of started to go all over the place and back up a little bit, as he wasn't moving forward as you would hope a horse would. Don't get me wrong. That's your second start, right? I mean, that's I don't know. That's like taking a puppy to PetSmart for the first time and expecting them to be a really behaved dog. Not going to happen. But he was green. So, something that was interesting, and I loved listening to this about Johnny V, was talking about, Mike Smith rode him in the Haskell, did not ride him in the Derby. And, these riders do talk. I mean, they're competitors, but in some way there's some respect there. Hey, Mike, you want to tell me anything about this horse in your trip in the Haskell? And they'll talk. I mean, these guys have been riding together for lots of days and lots of years. So Mike, I believe, had told Johnny that this horse needs kind of to see someone coming. If he can see someone next to him, he's like game face. He's like, okay. But if he gets there out by himself, he kind of goes into la la land. And that's what I think worked out really well, because Johnny was waiting to look for Tiz the Law, was waiting to look because Authentic went to the lead. So he's waiting. And when Tiz the Law got close enough, that's where Authentic's like, nope, I got this. I can keep on going. So I thought he was pretty mature in that race. And kind of looking at the trip, he didn't make the lead like the first couple jumps out of the gate. But by the turn, you know, Johnny had said he had enough time that he knew by the time he got in the turn, he would be on the lead. And that's what happened.
I mean, I find it interesting because obviously, you know, because this horse needs that type of motivation, you know, how he's going to visualize how this race is going to play out and how he needs to, you know, race the horse so that the horse is motivated. Right.
Well, I think he's going. I think from post 9, the track at Pimlico, and just doing what's right for the horse and putting him in the race in the best position, Johnny, I think, has to go. I would be really shocked if Johnny didn't go. I believe even in the interview that I'm referring to, Johnny said him going. It's just going to depend who else decides to go with him. You have to think Art Collector, another horse that might try to go a little bit, 1,000 Words. But again, 1,000 Words is trained by Bob Baffert. So in these races, you got to give your horse the best shot to win. But usually you're not going to see stablemates like dueling it out on the track. But you never know. It could happen.
All right. Pneumatic. Very interesting here and curious, because we're talking about, you know, how a jockey can strategize and how they're going to run the race with the horse in regard to the post position here, right? Like impressive at Monmouth, coming off an impressive race in Monmouth, but like because of the post position, does that benefit where this horse is coming from with this jockey?
Well, I think post here, post 10, he's been in post 10 2 starts back in the Belmont, which was different because it was at 1 1/8. It wasn't the same configuration of 1.5 miles going around the track one complete time. You know, we finished 4th in the Belmont, but what I'll say about post in the sense that if Authentic's gonna go and Pneumatic's not gonna go, at least you know he can kind of shift over a little bit, right? Because that's gonna go. And if other horses are gonna go, I think he's still gonna be able to get into a spot where he wants to be. Last time out, that happened to be just a length or 2 off the leaders. He settled in 3rd. It was an 8-horse race. He got a nice trip and then just kind of, you know, really stepped up and got his 3rd lifetime win, but his first stakes win. So for him, just looking at his races, with the exception of the Matt win where he finished 3rd, I think this horse is going to get a good stalking trip. He's not going to go to the front with Authentic. He's just going to kind of try to tuck in and maybe be, you know, you got 11-horse race, maybe be in 4th early on, maybe even a little closer in 3rd. And that's kind of what I see from him. And for me, I think that's a good place to be in. I think some of these horses are going to struggle closing from out of the clouds. I mean, I do like Mr. Big News, but that's why I'm only using him underneath, because he tends to come from off the pace. And we say the word pace all the time, but that's going to be really the big thing here. How quick do they go? Because if they really burn each other out and someone goes with Authentic, then you're making an opportunity for those horses to come from off the pace.
All right, Ashley, break it down for us. How are we playing this?
I want to try to beat Authentic, but I don't know. I was really impressed last time out. I liked him in the Derby for like 3rd or 4th on my tickets. I didn't see him winning. I just didn't see that happening. But I do think Authentic will be really tough in here. As far as how I would structure a ticket, I'm just going to go for an exacta, I guess. My exacta, just in case. Art Collector could be sneaky in here, and he's been hyped up. So for me, in terms of an exacta, I would use the 3 and 9 on top with the 10 for second. I'd probably play that for, I don't know, $5 or $6. Nothing too expensive. And then the try is where I'd get creative in here. So the try, I would use the 3, 9 on top. Then I would use the 3, 9, and 10. And then I would finally toss in my long shot, Mr. Big News. So then I would use 2, 3, 9, 10, And I have to feel like, maybe I'd use the filly. I know you like the filly. I think maybe underneath I could use her in this spot for third. For me, though, I don't see her as the winner. I know you're going to be hoping that I'm wrong. You're going to be going all in on Swiss Skydiver. But to me, Authentic's probably the top. I'm really excited to see what Art Collector will do. I've never was on the bandwagon from the start, but he's a horse that's kind of emerging and showing himself to have some talent.
I bet you a lot of money is going to be placed on him again, because I think there were a lot of people that were disappointed in regards to the Derby.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, man, I could get him this time.
Hey, might happen. I think that, like I said, this is a interesting race. We're seeing some rider changes. We're seeing because of COVID and riders deciding to stay at Keeneland. I mean, you're seeing a lot of local riders getting their chance to shine. Sheldon Russell's on Accession. That's one for Steve Asmussen. Javian Toledo, been a very accomplished rider, especially in Maryland. Horacio Caramanos, another one. And then Trevor McCarthy. Those are kind of the four that race on the Maryland circuit consistently. And I think that's an awesome thing for them to get that opportunity to get on horses that they've never ridden before, but you're on the line for $1 million and typically what would be the second leg of the Triple Crown.
So are you heading down there, by the way? Are you going to be?
I am.
You are?
Yeah,
are you going?
Really
are you going to? Is Kevin Plank still have those big Under Armour parties like on Friday night? Is it Friday? Yeah, Friday night.
I don't know with COVID. I don't know. But last year, quick story, because this is ABR, so I can talk about this. But ABR had a party at the Mount Washington Tavern, which if you're ever in Baltimore, really cool spot to go to.
Yes.
It was my first time to the Preakness, and I got to take my dad along with me.
Nice.
And he ensured that we were going to close down the ABR party. So that is what we did. But it was so much fun. We had different people talking there. Peter Fortunal, Gabby Gaudet, you see on TVG. They talked for a while. There was like a silent auction. Great food, great beverages, of course. And I had to close it down because my dad said so.
I love it. I had many late nights at the Mount Washington Tavern after after a softball game or a kickball game wow, that just took me back.
That's going to be a little disappointing. Dad won't be there. No ABR party. It was, the proceeds from the silent auction went to a good cause. That's what I keep on saying. 2021 is going to be the year.
Yeah, 2021. And maybe you and I will both be there.
Let's plan. Girls trip. Hopefully we'll go Friday for the girls and then Saturday for the big race.
There you go. Ashley, great job as always. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, Betting After Dark, Anita Marks, Ashley Mailloux, America's Best Racing. Really excited heading into, of course, this weekend. And again, just a reminder, Stable Duel. Make sure you download the app. $10,000 Preakness contest, $25 bet to get in, and Ashley just gave you a ton.
I'm so sick. I have it opened up right now on my iPad.
There you go.
I know it's cool. Like I said, the Preakness contest. But if you're looking for something during the week, got a day off, and you want to have some action, they got contests almost every day.
There you go. And Ashley just gave us a number of horses that we could plug into our roster. So anyway, again, great job, Ashley. Enjoy the Preakness and good luck, everybody.